I have a heart for the generations. I look at children and like network marketing, children are like network marketing. You're looking at your 20 percenters and you're like, I'm going to invest in this 20% and it'll be thousands upon thousands that are affected. When I look at the children, I think I'm investing in these babies and I'm looking at thousands and thousands that are affected. I'm looking at my great great grandchildren. The Bible said the reason why God chose Abraham was because Abraham was going to whisper in his children's ear the glories of God. And that's why he chose him. That's why I do what I do. And that's why I do what I do on social media, because I want mamas, I want daddies, I want people to look at their babies and go, those generations right there, I want to whisper in their ear.
Welcome to the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur, where we, Becky
and Monique, your new biz besties, both busy moms just like you.
We're here to talk all things network marketing, mom life, and how to truly live out your calling. We'll be dropping 2 episodes each week to help you, the busy mompreneur, know the exact strategies to build both your business and your home. You'll hear each week from one of the top network marketers on their best tips for what's led to their success and what's working now.
We know that you're here because you are called to something more. You have a desire to succeed in both your business and at home, and we are going to teach you how. If you love what you hear here on the podcast and want to be one of our success stories, join us inside our community, the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur, where we provide a daily social media action plan, additional resources, kingdom coaching, and more. Click the show notes for the link to join. So let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur podcast. Today, you all are going to be so excited to hear from this phenomenal woman. So we have Shoshanna Pearl with us today. Hey, Shoshanna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, we are so excited for our audience to hear from you. If you guys are not familiar with Shoshanna, she is a mom of 4. She is a diamond ambassador with Plexus. She is doing the thing. And I have personally, I'm just going to say my little personal nugget here. I have been following her on social media. And the other day she posted about who her parents were. And I had like my jaw dropped because your mom wrote a book literally back in the 90s, I think. And my parents, one time at my parents' house, I like found this book and read it. And I was like, this is such a good book. And it's like an older book, but it was very life-changing. It was on marriage and it was very life-changing for me personally. And when you shared that, I was like, okay, I want to get to know you. Just knowing who your parents are and all that they have done and impacted. And obviously you have your own journey and story. And so thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be great.
Well, I just have to say too, I think it's so wild how God weaves so many of us, here on earth, as a result of what we're building for the kingdom. And I just think that's incredible. Like when Monique told me that about the book she read, and then she kind of connected who you were and they were your parents. I was like, that is just wild, how she already was following you and, admiring your success and just your character and how you show up from afar. But then, learning that fun little fact, it's like so cool. It's just really beautiful to me how we get connected with so many of the women that we interview and the people that we know or have in common. It's just really fun to learn that.
Yeah, it's such a small world, isn't it?
It is. It is. So share with us a little bit about your story. If you can kind of take us back to the beginning, if somebody is listening to this and they are wanting to grow their own business, can you kind of share with us a little bit about who you are and your journey?
So so complicated. It goes so far back. But we'll kind of fast forward. My parents were from Memphis and they did a lot of ministry. They won servicemen to the Lord and they did full-time ministry growing up. And so we moved to an Amish community and that's where they ended up starting to write books. And it was just from people asking them questions. How do you raise your kids? How do you, with your marriage? And so that's how they started writing books. And I was homeschooled and I started an herb store when I was about 13. very business minded. I love making things happen. I love making money. And I just knew that I wanted control over my own life to like really not live struggling day to day. Right. So I worked full time. And when I got married, I had babies, but I struggled with health and I had a hard marriage, and that in itself affected my health. And I worked overtime trying to make enough money to keep us afloat. And that was my lifestyle. It was making money to and I did. I made a good amount of money. I had an herb store that was doing really well. And then I was introduced to network marketing. And I had seen network marketing not done well, and I didn't know that it could be done extraordinary. But my friend, Kristen Abart, she invited me over to eat, and she said, this business, Plexus, is incredible, and it is changing her life with the products. But she was all about this business is great. That was her mindset. And it was the first time actually I had seen someone posturing network marketing in a way that was just like the business is good. Like it wasn't salesy, it was a fact. The business is good. The numbers add up. The money is there, the products are there, it works. And I trusted her. I trusted that what she was saying was real. It wasn't something I experienced. I just was like, wow, okay, the numbers do add up. The products do make sense. And I got on board. Within the first year, we were making more than a brain surgeon. Actually, when I signed up, I signed my husband up because of where I was raised. I didn't have a social security number until after I'd gotten married. Another crazy story, but I didn't remember my social security number. So I actually signed my husband up and worked his business. And I did that for a full year, and got him to be making more than a brain surgeon. And then I signed up underneath him and then built again. So he went to Diamond. In 2 years, he was Diamond. And I think 3 years, then it was him Diamond and me Diamond. So anyway, I've been doing it 10 years.
That is incredible. I mean, first of all, that you were able to do it not just once, but twice, because that's, I mean, essentially what happened,
Mhm.
and really powerful. And I think I was just going to mention too, when you were talking about your health and how you kind of, one of the reasons you entered into this space was because of the health journey you were on and trying to heal. And I just feel like so many people don't realize like the your trauma, your hurt, the emotions, all the things, the stress of life that you're dealing with can directly contribute to your physical health. It's like that book, The Body Keeps the Score. I mean, Monique and I
Yes.
talk about this all the time because I as well was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder in the middle of some very tumultuous situations in my own marriage. And so I feel like, there are probably women out there that whether it's like their marriage or whatever, but I just think one thing to evaluate if you're struggling with your health is that there could be some other underlying issues, right? Or contributing factors. And so I think it's really interesting to me how you entered into the industry because of that and because of your faith for your friend. But also you mentioned that her posture was different and
Mhm.
how she was like showing up, how she presented it. The math was correct, the math was mathin', things added up. I would love to just hear, what is it that made you look at the opportunity differently because of her? Like, what was it about her? Like, what was it that she did? What was it that she, said? Was there anything specific that you felt like maybe in the beginning, if someone else had talked to you about it, you were a little guarded maybe, right? Or kind of turned off by the idea? Because that was me, right? Like I was the
Yeah.
same situation. I was like, I don't know about this stuff. People are making these things up. But it was a
Yes.
similar situation where I felt there was a level of trust for the person
Mhm. Yes.
that talked to me. So I would just love to hear a little bit about what did that look like for you?
That's a great question. The difference was that she did not avoid talking about business. She didn't avoid talking about the products. Like if she didn't have an answer, she would go, I actually don't know. That's a great question. Let me look that up. And so it made it really, really simple. But also, she had complete confidence. She's like, no, this has been done. This is how they do it. And she didn't have all of the answers, but the ones that she did have, they were concrete. And I think a lot of times with most people that talk to me about network marketing, they came in dragging their tail because they were nervous, because a lot of people have a bad taste about network marketing. And so because it wasn't done right really in the 90s, and the way network marketing used to be structured was often very pyramid like, and then you were stacking people underneath people. Network marketing has really changed and really grown over the years, right? And the older generation did not necessarily know that. So I think that a lot of people came in posturing with network marketing for sales, pushing us. And two, they came in, even if they believed in the products, even if they believed in the business, it's like taking off in an airplane. If you're taking off in an airplane, you cannot go 80%. You go 100%, right? She came in 100%. I'm doing this. I'm going to be making an extra, for her, it was $300 to $400 a month. And this is how I do it. I buy my products. This is how much it signs up. And then I just need like 3 to 5 customers, and I'm going to get my products paid for. And these products are helping me do this, that, and the other. So she had like her goal, and I was a part of her goal. And for me, that wasn't a sales point. That wasn't a turnoff. There was no hidden agenda. It was point blank, this is how it's done. And it also made it very doable for me to do it, right? And she's like, and she said, I will help you. I want to help you do the same. And so it was just so natural and confident.
Yeah. Well, and you attract the kind of people based on who you are, right? And like the way you
Yes.
show up. And so obviously, like you shared with us, you're very business minded. And
Mhm.
so for her to present it in that way and be like, hey, this is exactly it. There's, not being cryptic or like hiding
Yes.
things, I'm
Yeah.
sure it was like, okay, I appreciate her honesty. And she is so passionate, right? Like when other
Mhm.
people are really passionate about something, you're drawn to them. You're like, oh man, why
Yes.
is she so excited? Like what is it
Mhm.
about this thing? Yeah. So I think that's really really insightful, because I think people, unfortunately, right? But just like with every industry, if we're being honest, it's like there could be a bad reputation, even in ministry, there could be a bad reputation in the
Yeah.
police force and the,
Mhm.
education.
Absolutely.
Somebody could have a bad experience with a doctor, so really, truly,
Right.
it can happen anywhere. But I love that you said, it was because it came from someone that you trusted, but here's why, and I
Yeah.
think that's a really valuable piece for people to listen to, is not to be cryptic, not to be like, well, get on this call and I'll tell you, but instead, like, here's the real, and here's what I'm
Yeah.
working towards, and I want you to be a part of it. I think that's really powerful.
I think network marketing really has changed as well. I think that it really it is the industry to be in. It is
Hmm.
the money making, stay at home with your babies, do ministry, enjoy life, travel the world, make friends. Like it really is the business to be in. Like I said, I did a lot of business, right? And I spent a lot of money doing business. Like right now, I'm working on publishing a poetry book. The amount of money, I'm a great poetry writer, but the amount of money that goes in to publishing a book is ridiculous. Will I get my money out of it? Probably not. Why? Because it takes a lot of money to go into something like that. And then you've got advertisement and this, that, and the other. And that's business. That's life with business. But network marketing is different. Network marketing, $34.95 is what it cost me to sign up in Plexus, which was like my Costco membership, right? And then all I'm doing at that point is just telling other people and helping other people. I'm not stocking products. Like most network marketing companies don't do that anymore. You don't have to stock products. Now you have your own website. People get to literally go to your website. You don't have all of those extra fees. And so think about $34.95 and being able to start a business for that. Not $20,000 for printing, for creating a book and printing a book, but $34.95. And it's just so doable for anyone.
Yes, I love that. So, with that early success that you had, if you think about the practical things that you did, how would you describe that? Like, if someone were to come to you and say, okay, Shoshana, like you hit this top rank immediately, what did you do?
Love people well. I think it's really important to love people well and invest in them, show up to their needs. I think that loving people well, showing up to their needs, and at the same time, it's a funny balance of loving people well, investing in their needs, being point blank, not hiding things, right? Posturing. And then at the same time, being aware of your 20 percenters and being aware of your 80 percenters. 20 percenters being the people that are wanting to work the business with you, wanting to like lock arms, and the people that are showing up. So often that 80% of people are the ones that don't show up, but they take. They're like, can you get me this? Can you do this for me? Can you do that? And sometimes it feels like, well, I'm needed, I'm needed, I'm needed. But recognizing my 20 percenters, I recognize that if I help this 20 percenters, I'm helping thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. If I help my 80 percenters, I'm only helping 20 people total.
Wow. Wow. Okay. The magnitude of what you just said, I hope people, all right, if you guys are listening on the podcast, just go back and rewind and re-listen to what she just said. That is huge. That is huge because so often people are so focused on that 80% because they're loud and they
Yes.
need that attention. And so you feel like it's urgent. You feel like whatever is loud. And I was just watching a TED Talk that was talking about exactly this. It was an ER doctor who was saying that she has to go into the ER every day and she has to differentiate the loud versus the urgent. And so I think what you're talking about is the people who are loud and who are telling you all the things they're going to do, but they don't actually follow through. That does not need your immediate attention versus the ones who they see the vision, they show up. Becky always uses the analogy of a playing tennis, where you hit the ball and then they hit the ball back. And if they don't want to hit the ball back, then you put the tennis racket and you find somebody else who wants
Yes.
to go play tennis. So I love that you phrased it that way. So something else I'd love to ask you is you do such an amazing job encouraging women. Like your social media, I'm always so inspired and so encouraged by how you show up. You're authentic in that your life is not easy, your life is not perfect. You walk through a hard journey of, parenting and just all the things that you've walked through, but you are so encouraging to other women. And I think the things that comes through from my perspective is it is so obvious that your identity is rooted in Christ. And can you just speak to that a little bit and how, other people, how that helps other people?
So I don't feel like that I was always able to show up that way. I think with being a daughter of fame, because my parents, I grew up pretty famous in the conservative world with book writing, and my parents with writing books on marriage, and then I end up in a divorce. Talk about tearing up the box, right? And I'm kind of falling off a pedestal for a lot of people.
Yeah, especially in the church world. But let me just say before you continue that something that has helped me personally is women being open and honest, at least to a degree, like a respectful degree, in the posture and the way they show up as they walk through stuff like this has helped me, right? Like Lisa Turkhurst and, people like that, where it's like, okay, that way you don't feel that sense of shame like I'm sure you carried, like I did as well. I stayed in my marriage for a very long time because I felt like God would send me to hell if I got divorced. And so I just want to say, like, I'm sure I can only imagine, right? Like my dad was an elder and to a degree, and my mom, principal at a private school and all this. So, I mean, I did have some of that, but I can only imagine, what you've had to walk through just outside of the marriage, right? The feelings of who am I going to disappoint and all this. But I just want to commend you for being able to do that because, unfortunately, it is a fallen world, right? And we can't control other people, as we've probably both had to learn. We can't control the mistakes they make, the choices they make. But ultimately, we have hope in Christ. And so anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you for walking that journey because it is most certainly not one that has been easy for me as I'm walking it right now. And I think I don't want to say I want more women to talk about their divorce, but I do think in general, just like the messy part of life, for years, I think Christians and even, sometimes church members and leadership have tried to stuff it in the closet and hide it. And it's created some really toxic, I guess, effects because of that. And so anyway, I'm sure, your parents have been very gracious and loving and supportive of you and walking that journey with you. But it's definitely not easy. And God is using your story. He really is. But anyway, sorry, totally interrupted you.
Good. I know it is a hard journey, and it's harder in the conservative circle because I think that you got Pharisees. I mean, Pharisees were the religious men that crucified Christ, right? And then you have Christians that love God and they know that, God hates divorce, but at the same time, there is a time and a season for all things under the sun, and divorce is one of them. And life is not in a box. And we have to make decisions that are right for our generations. And God has boundaries. God makes decisions, right? So for me, I think that getting out and making that decision that I felt like was necessary for my generations, then it definitely caused a ruckus in my life, and I created a lot of enemies overnight. And a lot of people that I thought were my friends or that were supposed to be the Christians. And I found out that it was pretty wolf-like and pretty painful. But God used it in such a beautiful way. God used it for me to get refined. He used it for me to fall before him. He used it for me to tear up the box of religion, the box that I'd been holding myself in, the box of perfection, the need to please people, to make people believe something that I'm this happy person, and instead go, okay, God, what do you want? Hey, God, I'm hurting. I need your help. Hey, God, I literally can't take another step. Now what? And I used to think that King David was so emotional. I'm like, he's in highs and he's in lows, and he's like, God, kill him. Oh, God, I love you. Oh, I'm crying my tears out all night long. And through this process, I realized I am like King David. I am feeling feelings that I haven't felt before, but they're so healing. And it's interesting, trauma, any kind of trauma that you go through, any kind of abuse actually causes scars in your brain and brain damage in your brain. I posted about that this morning. They've seen the past 20 years, you can actually see that in brain imaging. And causing that brain damage creates a lot of fog and a lot of health issues. But the opposite of trauma is playing. And one of the beautiful things that I feel like I work hard to encourage women is to play in the creation that God created, to enjoy the leaves and the water and the laughter in your children, to play in the kitchen, to play when you go to the ocean, to play and camp out in your car, to just live life, not broken. Yes, we get bruised, and yes, we fall down, and yes, pain happens, but to not live in the past of regret, to not live in shame, to live freedom in Christ and play, because there's so much healing. And if you look at children, and statistically, people always say families have to stay together, it's broken children, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Yes, there's so many truths, but that's not it, right? If you look statistically, the kids that are the most successful are mamas that are happy, mamas that play, mamas that show up and pour in. And I have a heart for the generations. I look at children and like network marketing, children are like network marketing. You're looking at your 20 percenters and you're like, I'm going to invest in this 20% and it'll be thousands upon thousands that are affected. When I look at the children, I think I'm investing in these babies and I'm looking at thousands and thousands that are affected. I'm looking at my great great grandchildren. The Bible said the reason why God chose Abraham was because Abraham was going to whisper in his children's ear the glories of God. And that's why he chose him. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why I do what I do on social media, because I want mamas, I want daddies, I want people to look at their babies and go, those generations right there, I want to whisper in their ear.
Oh, girl, you just took us to church and I'm over here like, I'm sure Monique has stuff to say about it too, but I was like, I got to jump in real quick. Oh my word. That is so powerful. And I'm over here sitting here going, that's going to be the podcast intro, like right there. That is it. Because you are exactly right. There is so much power in what we are doing and what we've walked through and how we, oh man, I just feel like I could talk about a million different things, but I did want to bring up, it's really interesting when you talked about when we go through trauma and there's like literal, you can look at brain scans. And so when I was actually going through my own diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and it's kind of interesting now because I'm like, do I really have it? Like, like I'm like, is that really what it is? But when I had my MRI done, there was all these like spots of white matter, and there was no lesions, quote unquote. But he said, oh, it's a sign there could have been a lesion, but there's no guarantee, right? And so it's just interesting to me because I had, yes, like emotional, whatever, but I had also endured like physical abuse, and you just kind of wonder, like, for me, I'm like, I just wonder if that is what contributed to it. And so it's just really interesting to me. And that something that as I've been walking through this journey, I feel like has brought me the most healing has been like getting outside and like, like taking my dogs, instead of just like staying in bed when my kids are gone or whatever. I'm like, no, like I felt like God was like, get up and walk. Like, the lame man, Jesus is like, do you want to be healed? Like, get up and walk. And that's literally what I felt like God was telling me is like, do you want to be healed? Get up and go. And like how you were like, get up and play, that's how I feel. And so I've like taken my dogs to the park or like on hikes or when my girls aren't with me so that I feel like I'm able to do something fun, and enjoyable. And even just yesterday, this is hilarious. And people are going to be like, that is so ridiculous. But my dad let me mow his yard for the first time because he has this huge mower because we live on 5 acres. And we're about to acquire 5 more acres, like with their property, so that I can hopefully build a house on it someday. And so he was like, you need to learn how to start mowing and help me out here, or whatever. And so like I got to mow in my daddy's huge mower for the first time. And I was like living my best life. Like, I was like almost like a 13-year-old girl, right? Being like, Daddy, trust me with the mower. It's just so beautiful, right? How I feel like God is kind of recentering those of us that have been these high performers and saying like, hey, but really what is my priority? And like you said, it's being able to whisper in the ears of our children's children and the impact and the legacy. And it's like all the things that we thought when we entered into the industry, but then life happens. We get, we chase after the shiny objects and the carrots, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like it's really fun to have those things and go on the incentive trips and do all of these things, but ultimately, God anoints us for those kinds of positions and gives us that skill set so that we can further his kingdom. And I just love that what you just shared because I'm definitely like, I need to go follow her right now. And don't worry, guys, we'll put all of her information in the show notes. But it's just so encouraging to see like the light and joy that you have after something so hard. So just really inspiring me. I know that everyone listening is going to be so inspired by this. And I also feel like sometimes God brings women to our podcast just for me. Like, I'm like, he brought you just for me. Like, I didn't even know you. And I'm like, this is such a blessing to me. So if nothing else, you've blessed my life today. But I know you're going to bless everyone that listens to it. So thank you so much.
I think God does stuff like that. He looks at you and he goes, I love you. He just does it. And he just says, I'm going to give you something special today. And I think that Think about, the Bible says that he thinks about us like more than, he has more thoughts than the sand on the sea, right? He does things like that for you.
I love that. Oh, I love this so much. So you said something, you said, I had to do what was necessary for my generations. And I think that is such a powerful statement. So I'd love for us to kind of talk for a few minutes about motherhood, because we are all moms here, we are all entrepreneurs, and there is that delicate balance as you are raising your kids. And specifically, as you are building up the next generations and saying, okay, the buck stops here when it comes to certain things that you will or will not pass on to your children. So, can you share with us a little bit about your own motherhood journey and how that plays out for you now?
Well, where do I begin? Um, Life was a little complicated in the way that we had a family dynamic. And so, but my goal, so whenever I start a year, this would help. Whenever I start a year, I think, what do I measure my decisions off of? And my measurement is usually about 5 things. So it is, I want to raise a generation that loves God. I need to make money to provide for my family. I want to spend time with my babies and pour into their cups all the time. I want to travel, connect, and see people, see the world that God created. And what is my 5th one? I don't even remember right now, but there's a 5th one. Anyway, so I'll look at that. So then let's say that I come up against any decision. I say, does this make me money? No. Okay. Does it pour into my babies? Yes. Does it affect the kingdom? Yes. Does it? And I ask those 5 questions against my decisions. And if something is 5 out of 5, 100%, it's a no-brainer. I do it, right? If it's a 3 out of 5, but it's my main goal, my babies and the kingdom, then I do it, right? But if it's going to affect me, like it's going to really hurt me financially, and I'm, then it's like, do I do it or not? Because it's really going to hurt me. Is it really worth it? Does it hit the other 4? Right? So that allows me to make decisions. So I've always done that. And I've always even looked at my 5 and been like, are these my 5? Where's my 5 this year? Where I'm at? And so I'm always evaluating. But growing the kingdom, raising my babies, and making money are usually my stables, because those affect everything, right? And then, so I did that through their childhood, which meant that the decisions that I made were always in that direction. So for example, even though I do business 110%, like I always have, they're with me. So they were with me in my job. They were with me, like when I had my herb store, they were pouring up herbs with me. When I was speaking on stage with Plexus, I often had a toddler on stage with me. And when I was doing a big meeting with Plexus with other women in the room, then I was usually holding the baby, even nursing. Like that was part of my life, was being mama and not putting them last. They always came first, right? But even keeping them first, I also remember that over serving them is not helping them either, right? So in the process, allowing them to be a part of the business, be a part of serving, be a part of loving people well, it allowed me to raise a generation that loved God, that loved other people, that learned to give and to learn to receive, because they were in the midst of what I was doing. So we'd be in the kitchen cooking. They would be on the countertop with me. We would be baking food together, and we could give it to a neighbor, right? Always having them with me in everything and that's never changed. I've done that with them always. I think that, I know there's a big training thing right now on my social media. Everybody's asking, like, how do you train your kids? My parents spanked me growing up. And so some people are like really anti-spanking. My parents, there's a difference between spanking and abuse. But for me, I raised my kids very, very differently, in the sense of, now I'm 100% Bible believing, what the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. But I also think that there's a lot of other Bible verses. And I think that fathers provoke not your children to wrath. I think there's so many different pieces, right? And so one of the things that I raise my kids to be is I think it's really, really important to be strong in spirit and living life with you, hand in hand with you in the kitchen, out and about. And my parents raised me strong in spirit, but that is my focus for my kids. So rather than complete obedience, I actually like them to be obedient, but I like them to challenge me. Why do you think that, Mom? How do I do that? You know, like, what are you doing it that way for? And it's not a disrespectful way. It's my 4-year-old can insert an opinion in a conversation and it's quality. Like, I'm like, this girl could be president.
Well, I think there's a respectfulness, to it, kind of like what you're saying. Like, you can teach them how to do it in a respectful way, but also, right, like, to a degree, I think older generations, it was like children should be seen and not heard. And because of that, and because of the way adults, treated children, it was like, oh, they're just making this stuff up or whatever, and you hear now of like so many women. Even one of my spiritual mentors at church was sharing with me about, something that happened to her, and she never told anyone until after
Right.
that person passed away. And they were like, what? Because she just knew no one would believe her, and because, and so I just think there's a lot of power in the way you're raising your kids to be able to say, like, yes, there is a sense of obedience, but it's more out of respect. Like, if someone respects their elder, there's going to be obedience, and if there isn't a respect mutually to a degree, even though it looks different for adults to respect children, but we respect their bodies, we respect their privacy, we respect their emotions, we give a space for that. And so I think our generation, it's like, I think that's why some people have gone so opposite. Like, I'm not spanking my kids. And it's like, okay, like, I get that, but it's not that's not what caused your trauma. I mean, maybe for some, maybe, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's so powerful for almost like a permission slip for parents to be like, hey, like, it's okay. Not necessarily if your child's talking back to you rudely, but also like, you want them to be able to think for themselves and not just follow the sheep off a cliff, like, it's like, we want them to have that, confidence in Christ and confidence in themselves that they can make those decisions. So I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So I want to speak to something you said about the 5 questions, because I thought that was brilliant. And I think it really, as you were saying all of your questions, I was thinking, I need to create my own questions,
I
just
thought
as
the
a
same
natural
thing. I
Yes,
was
I'm
like,
like,
this is like a framework for a book. Like, you need to write a book.
yes, there's your next book. There's your next piece of poetry. Everyone needs to create their own questions, because what that does, we talk a lot about the difference between the sacred, like what are those things for you that are sacred, and then what are the things that you have to just sacrifice in order to achieve your goals. And so essentially this is that. It's really filtering, all right, what are the things that are of highest priority to you? And if you know that those are the questions that you can ask and be able to look at the answers and say, this is something I can say yes to, or this is something I need to say no to. Like, it's very clear. So I love that. And I think so many people can take that away. But of the ones that so you said loves God, teaching your kids to love God, to make money, spend time with your babies, travel. I love where you were talking about how money for you is always that priority. You said it's always in the top 3, because the reality is, you're the provider. And Becky and I, we always love sending each other reels. I don't know if you have that friend that you like share the Instagram reels. So we're constantly like passing reels back and forth to each other. Anyway, yesterday she had sent me a reel, and it was this preacher who was talking about how God never just drops things in our laps, but he gives us the resources to be able to meet our needs. And so I love that, when you went through this really hard season, it's not like you were like, well, let me just hope that God provides everything that I need. You went to work and you were like, okay, I have this business, I have this opportunity. And I think so often for our listeners, there are so many people who, you're listening to this and you know that God has given you your network marketing business for a reason, but you're not working it. You're not taking advantage of that. You're not seeing, the same $34, you mentioned it was $34 for people to start their business. The same $34, someone can take that and make it, $34 million or $3 million or whatever, you know, and then somebody else can take that and put their box in their closet and do nothing. And so I think someone needs to hear, like, it is good for you to prioritize income building. Like the Proverbs 31 woman, she planted a vineyard. You know, she was doing business. So thank you for sharing that, because I feel like that's very impactful.
I love Proverbs 31, and I talk about that all the time because I feel like femininity is so important. And I think that people take femininity and they are confused by it nowadays. And I'm like, you know, look at Proverbs 31. She wore purple, the king's color. Like she looked good and her thighs were strong. Like she worked out. She worked out. She looked good. And then she went out and she bought property. She went out and bought property and she sold property. She was realist. She was like, oh, real estate. Okay, let's make a larger, I'm going to buy this whole piece of land. That's a huge deal, right? And she cooked and she served, and people looked at her and was like, and the heart of her husband was safely, like he trusted her, like he was safe. What does that mean? Like, I know with my friend, I didn't have that with my spouse, but with my friends, I really understand the Bible verse being closer than a brother, having that safety. And that safety is beautiful. And she had that. She was far above rubies because she was safe in that. And I look at all of her and she was feminine. She was lovely. She was feminine. And part of that was making money outside of the house. Part of that was being a go-getter and making things happen. And her femininity, her beauty, her strength, her wild fierceness did not take away from him. It made him look even better. People looked at him and went, whoa, what does he have? He's got to have something going on because she's amazing, right? And I think it's so important to know that because, and for our girls to know that, to be all of them, to be fierce, beautiful women of God. And that's a passion of mine.
I love
it.
that. Oh, we could talk forever.
Yes, I know, seriously. Well, as you know, the name of our podcast is The Kingdom Minded Mompreneur. And I feel like this is the perfect segue as we're talking about the Proverbs 31 woman and building out, you know, a kingdom in heaven, but also here on earth. I would love for you to share, like, what would be your definition of the kingdom minded mompreneur?
I think that if you have a goal in mind, then it points that direction. You're pointed that direction. I think often it's like, you know, like the 5 things that I talked about. It's like I will have a goal in mind. And so if I'm going this direction and it doesn't point to my goal, then I'm off course. And at any point in time, it's easy to be off course if you don't have your goal in mind. And so if you're a kingdom mama, if your goal is to fill up heaven and not hell, if your goal is to raise your generation to know God, at any point in time, if you're trying to balance, if you work, if you make money, if you do everything in this world that everybody is like, congratulations, but you lose your kids, you are going to be heartbroken, right? So your goal is to raise babies that love God with their heart, mind, and soul. And your goal is to raise babies that are strong in spirit, that can make healthy choices in picking spouses, that make healthy choices and choosing friends, that have healthy boundaries so that it's not just a one-time thing, but it's a generational thing. And that's your goal, right? And as a kingdom mama, I want to raise babies that love God. And so if it means I drop everything and I just focus on my babies that day, then that's what I do, if that's what they need. If it means that they go with me to the bank and sit down and we snicker and talk in the corner and we, you know, learn something together, then that's what we do. But they are my priority, whether I'm doing business, whether I'm doing ministry, they are my priority. And I think it's really, it's just having a point and going, it's kingdom. And then what does that look like in this moment? And every single moment is a choice. And every single moment is a pivoting point. It's a point that if we are getting it wrong in that moment, well, guess what? You have another moment. So take that moment and make it count. And those moments stack up. and the pouring in. One thing that I really, okay, this is an analogy that I think is, imagine this, because I see kids that are homeschooled that just get filled up with the world when they grow up. I see kids that are raised in public school. One of the things that I wanted to homeschool my kids, my ex asked the judge to put our kids in public school, and that was hard. But at the same time, I went, this is not, there are people in this world that are in all different walks of life. How is it that some kids come out loving God no matter where they're at? What's the common denominator? And I think of it like this: kids are born as a cup, and their cup is empty. And we have an option. We can fill that cup up, or we can ignore that cup, and somebody else is going to fill it up. Or the kid's going to fill it up, the school's going to fill it up, everybody around them is going to fill it up, or they're going to be empty, they're going to grow up, and then the world's going to fill them up. All in an instant, because they're empty. But if you, as a parent, kingdom-minded, pour in the word of God, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, you keep filling that cup up, and you never stop filling that cup up with love and laughter, with joy and play, with the love of God, and for them to see how beautiful he is. And you fill that cup up, and they go to public school, their cup's already full.
Yes.
So people try
So
to pour
good.
something in, and it's not that much. They can't put that much in, and you just keep pouring. No matter what, you keep pouring.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. Thank you so much. And I also think just prayer, pouring and prayer, lifting them up, because when you were talking about the school situation, God wants to be the parent of our kids more than we want to. Like, he wants to see our kids succeed more than we want them to. And so I think that's just such a good reminder. Thank you so much for being on. I am just like, you have filled us up today, just
Yes.
having this conversation and hearing your heart and the way that you are building your business, the way that you are building your family. And life is not easy, but you're still showing up every day. You have a smile on your face, and you're being that light to other people. So if somebody is listening to this and they want to connect with you, they want to follow you, can you share with us? And we'll put all of this in the show notes, but can you also just share with us where people can connect with you?
Yeah, thank you, Monique. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have poetry accounts. I have a love poetry account and a healing poetry account. And it is Breathe Healing Poetry on Instagram and Breathe Love Poetry on Instagram, Shoshanna Pearl on Instagram, and Shoshanna Pearl on Facebook. And I blog a lot of them, some of them are different, right? Because I'm posting different things. I don't post the love poetry on healing, even though I'm thinking about combining them, because I think that that's part of healing, is loving. And just like I said, play is the opposite of trauma. So, but you can find me there.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur. If you loved what you heard today, could you stop and give us a 5-star rating and review? It helps our visibility on podcasting platforms so others like you can hear more of this message.
Also, if this episode encouraged you, we would love for you to pass it along to your own biz bestie and anyone else who could benefit. Lastly, don't forget that if you want to hang out with us just a little bit more, join us inside the Kingdom Minded Mompreneur community. Click the link in the show notes. Bye for now.